pop up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Practical Inclusion for another week. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I broadcast from today and pay my respects to their elders past, present, emerging, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that happen to be watching us live or through the replay. I'm coming in from the land of the Wadawurrung people, and I have two guests with me today, which is a great joy for me. Luke, first, did you want to say whose lands you're coming in from today?
Yeah, certainly, Bree. I'm coming from and back to me. I'm coming from the Wurundjeri country today.
Fantastic. And Michelle, are you similar or are you located somewhere else?
Same country.
Beautiful. Thanks for doing that. Just before we go on, for those of you may have seen, I made a post, I think last week, or shared a post about the Aboriginal-owned social enterprise called Clothing the Gap. Some of you may have seen that they got taken to court by the Gap clothing company about a trademark issue, which they lost, and obviously, I'm sure, had to pay a lot of money to change their name to Clothing the Gaps. One thing that I think we should do, as if we want to be allies in this space, is they have a whole bunch of stock, is my understanding, that has to be cleared by, I think, the end of June, so that they can rebrand. Is that right, Luke? So they can rebrand to Clothing the Gaps, because, you know, that's clearly a big difference and worth going to court for. So what can we do? Jump on, buy some stock, I reckon, and really support this social enterprise that seems to do such amazing things. I don't know a lot about it, but it appears that they do amazing things for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and that's something that we can certainly do as allies, I would think. Right, let's talk gender affirmation, which is what we're here to talk about today, which is obviously a topic close to my heart, and I was scrolling through LinkedIn one day and saw a terrific resource that has been released that these two wonderful people have been involved in. So before we talk specifically about that resource, maybe, Michelle, if you want to go first, can you, traditionally, I'm not sure if you've seen this show before, but I asked people to share their story and what perhaps led them towards working in inclusion, or particularly working on this, in this case, the gender affirmation resource. And it is totally up to you how much or how little you share with us today.
Most people who do know me, actually, Bree, I am quite an open book. So, you know, the best way to educate is to be as open and transparent as we can. So I came out 8 years ago, and I was working predominantly within IT. And so a lot of companies, traveling around Australia, wiring petrol pumps, or working in data centers, doing data servers, or doing online packages as well. But when I was struggling with my gender identity and trying to figure out what I was going to do with coming out, there was no resources. And unfortunately, the company that I was working for was on an inclusive list of companies that were, I'm not naming any names of anything that are out there, but unfortunately, what I found was many companies are paying a certain amount of money to be on certain lists, and they're not actually really doing anything, right? And so I was kind of left standing there, not knowing what to do, and heard some comments from coworkers who were very homophobic and transphobic while I was in the workplace, and I go, this isn't a place that I can transition in. I had taken a step away and decided to go into, work for a friend who had a salon doing makeup and lash extensions, whatever. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. It was, is a passion of mine. It's something I always wanted to do when I was younger. I thought a small career break for a couple months. But as soon as I tried getting back in IT, I actually just found barriers. There was companies constantly saying things like trans isn't a cultural fit in the workplace. You need to stop transitioning and maybe, focus on your career, or finish your transition, come back and do that first, or look, whatever you need to do, whether it's scrub toilets or stock shelves, look after you and your daughters. So I couldn't find anything, and the only thing I found was manual labor, doing landscape gardening or cleaning, and it was absolute, as an American myself, I'm very career focused. You progress your career, and to take this step back was a huge highlight for me. Going, something's not right. And through conversations I was having over the years, I was connecting with different recruiting companies. They couldn't help me, but other people would pull me aside and have a coffee with me and tell me the truth of what's happening behind the doors. People who are overweight, people who are struggling with dental issues, people who identify as LGBT, people who identify all these different ways, and was basically told, again, many coffees. I pretty much can change my name to Juan Valdez, the amount of coffees I've had. And the problem is there's too many barriers and challenges within that space. And so we're not actually creating programs to focus on this. But also we focus too much on the binary. So we don't know a lot of the stats that are there on paper when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to homelessness. We look at it as LGBT as a whole. And I have learned to break it down: sexually diverse and gender diverse. And there's the inequity in the community is really, really extreme. And we can't see that because we're lumped together as one big community of communities. And that's not a bad thing. But the important thing for me was, how can I make a change when it comes to employment? Because nobody's talking about employment. We always focus on things like mental health or the general practitioners, or where we can get support for just changing our gender, talking to a GP or talking to a psychologist. But when I transitioned 8 years ago, it was, here's your blockers, here's your pretty blue estrogen pills, and may the force be with you. You're now a woman. Go. Right? And so I was like, what do I do? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? Like, how do I get my life moving forward? And so I became a trainer, a public speaker, doing a lot of work in there, connected with many different Fortune 500 companies, many companies who were on those lists that I talked about before. And it was by chance that Luke had come to me and hired me to do some training based on the history that I had done. And for me, I always found that the material out there that exists is very sexually diverse, same-sex marriages, same-sex attraction, and there's like a page on transgender or gender diverse. And there's, again, not much in there. Or the material is very academia 505, and it's very disconnected for the average person in the workplace. So I said, you know what, let's bring it back down. Let's make it, really talking about one-on-one. But also, unfortunately, I'm the stereotype in the media of the evil tranny, right? I'm the stereotype, the middle-aged man transitioning to a woman, right? So I'm this stereotype. And so what I found is the material you see out there in the news and the media and everything is very much designed to create an emotive response for, say, children or young girls, or the Me Too with women, or those who are more in the age space. But there's no emotive response for someone like me. So in the material, I created this emotive response. And I said, how can we relate that into this particular material? I met Luke and done some training. And I said, Luke, when you bring me in, I said, you don't only get training, but you get dinner and a show. And so we had a bit of fun, we got some food, we do some training, there's stories, there's whatever. And by the end, we came up with so many amazing pieces of feedback from all these different pieces within the transport industry. And Luke and I made this thing. You're like, let's do this. Let's create this guide together, not just for this company we're for, but for an entire industry. And it's something I'm very proud of. It's a small love letter from me to the community, because I'm a gender diverse person in a corporate place, in an industry, delivering something to assist an industry for my community.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Fantastic. Luke, you want to follow
How
on
do I
after
follow
that?
that? How do I follow that? I suppose for me, it's a very different journey for me. So I've been with my husband, now I can say husband, but I've been with my husband for 27 years. And when we met, we were working together, and it certainly was a different time back then, where we wouldn't tell people at work that we were together, and that we actually worked together for quite a number of years, over a decade. But we weren't very out and proud, I guess, until probably about maybe 12 to 18 months into our relationship, where we just went, right, well, we're going to take ownership of that, and if people have got an issue, they've got an issue. But one of the things that I guess, going back to what Michelle was talking about, that's different for me is that, and Michelle and I have had this conversation many times, I know that I've faced adversity and discrimination because of being an out gay man, but that there's still a little bit of a level of privilege within our community itself, in terms of I kind of sit in this privileged spot in terms of being a white man. I'm middle-aged. I'm very comfortable in my life. So while I have small,
good for 30, Luke. Okay.
What's that?
You look good for 30. That's okay.
I'll give you the $10 later, Michelle. For us, we started talking about the fact that we have an obligation to try and bring all the letters of our community back together, because I think that, when we were younger, I'm talking for myself here, Michelle, because I'm a daddy figure to her, but when we used to go out, we used to mix with all members of our community, and now it's very segregated, and we don't do that as much. And Michelle and I have had many conversations about the fact that we really need to make sure that we do something that's inclusive for all of our community, not just one little piece or this little piece or that little piece. You've got to include everybody at the table and having that conversation. And this was a really good start for us to do that. And now, because the Victorian Public Service has got gender affirmation leave built into the new EBA agreements, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. And so people really need to, as a manager, you need to be really open to your people coming to you for support. So you need to be the best ally possible for that person. The person that is affirming their gender really needs to know, where do I start and what are my rights and how do I do that piece? And then there's also the building the capability of our HR and people and culture teams to make sure that they understand that this, as an organisation, this is how we can support people going through what can sometimes be a really difficult journey, and it's a different experience for everybody. And we just really wanted to make sure that we were representing that.
And Luke hit that on the hill, around allyship. Allyship isn't just straights for gays or heterosexual and LGBT. We, again, are a community of communities, and we need allyship within our own wider rainbow family more than ever.
Mm-hmm. I could not agree more with probably everything that you've said, but also particularly that point. And I know in the training that I'm delivering, quite often there are people who identify as LGBTIQ, and they are there to learn about the other parts of the community because they want to be allies. And I think sometimes we see the greatest allies come from within the community, but in perhaps a different grouping than the particular group that needs help.
Don't get me wrong, Bree. Michelle and I have had many a wine where I've gone, right, it's question time. So, I'm very lucky that we've got a really open relationship where we can ask those questions, and sometimes that's missing as well. We're just being able to have that safe space to go, I feel comfortable, that I'm coming from a place of learning and development rather than from there's no bias, there's no nothing. It's just a curiosity to really want to make change. How can we do it? So I think I've been extremely lucky with Michelle and I forming a bit of a partnership in terms of taking on, especially the rail industry, but all industries to try and champion that inclusion.
And I think you highlighted sorry, Michelle.
I was going to say, but even when it came to when I started with the organization I'm in now, COVID had started to hit. There was an opportunity to come in. And there's many of us within the LGBT community who are at that people leader place with that hiring space and need to use our skills as to find good talent, but also understand that if somebody has a desire to be within a space or help make change, then really, champion those people, bring those people in, and they might not know it fully. Like, I didn't know the transport industry. I only had a negative experience of the transport industry coming in because of being a 6'3" trans woman. Like, I've been knocked down and spat on and all kinds of stuff. But to be able to come in and make change, this is what I say to a lot of people within our community, Bree, is we scream about making change. We'll go into the inside of the industry and start making change from the inside. That's the only way to do it. You can scream on the outside as much as you want, but it's when you get inside and start making the change inside that you can then open up more pathways for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that point, but I also let's expand that, because I guess what I'm constantly wanting to see is straight allies as well, to be really pushing within the industries that they're working in. And I think this is a great example. Michelle, you spoke to the lists of LGBTI inclusion and perhaps some of the gaps that exist there. If I was an employee, whether I'm straight or whether I identify as LGBTIQ, and I'm sitting within an organisation currently that either participates in one of these lists or doesn't, what should I be doing to push? Like, what message or what action should I be pushing for my industry or organisation?
I think the first thing to do is actually doing that research. Reaching out to someone like myself, someone like yourself, Bree, or even someone like Luke, and asking those questions as well. What can I do? I mean, it's many different. I think that's why the first thing it's seeking to ask the question, seeking to understand, and then once you do, and saying, okay, I have potential material that can relate to my workplace, then you bring those people in and have that conversation and help start putting together that pathway from there. Look, lean on your pride group, but don't see your pride group in the social space either. I've spoken to many different people who work within a PNC and HR space, and they usually say to me, going, "Oh yeah, well, we focus on Aboriginal people." I'm like, okay. And usually my first question to them is okay, tell me why. We all know why, but can you tell me why? Why is it important? Because you should be able to come back to me as someone in that space and go, okay, this is the reason why and what we're focused on. Great. What are your initiatives? Don't just tell me you do it because you do it to tick a box. Then I always get women's equality. And I'm going, don't tell me about equality. Talk to me about equity. Talk to me about women. Tell me about the intersectionalities of women and all the different identities and where they come from. Equity is really important. Equality doesn't really do what we need. And then when I talk about LGBT, they go, oh, yeah, but we've got a pride group. And then I go, okay, but what are you doing? How are you using that? And most organizations don't talk about it external. They do, oh, we went to Pride March, we did this and that. And I then push back and I say, well, great, you want to go to Pride March? I said, I'm not one of those, Bree, who really cans on about, the color and stuff like that. But the thing is we create this space for people to go to Pride Marches, whatever. But what I say to them is, challenge yourself. What did you deliver and do in the year to celebrate Pride? What did you do to be proud of in order to celebrate? You're just showing up and waving a rainbow flag, then I don't want to hear about it, because I'm sick of rainbow flags. I'm sick of flags. Flags are just symbols for tribes to come together. I said, I want to know what you're doing. Did you create an affirmation guide? Did you create a policy? Did you change some toilets? Did you create a mentor program, maybe for those who are gender diverse coming in? Did you create a pathway? What did you do? So tell me, show me what you're doing. It's the whole show me the money, but don't just show up. I'm tired of people just showing up. I need to see what you're doing.
I think more to that as well is the fact, Bree, that you can't do any kind of diversity, inclusion and belonging initiatives or feel like you can make a difference by yourself. And so while one person has a voice and it's very powerful, you really need to seek out and find those allies. And I think that's probably where it's been wonderful for me, because I now have a really wonderful circle of very extremely talented D&I people around me that I can go, I don't know about this. So I go and ask that question, because you're not going to know all the answers. We all come from such different viewpoints, and that's what we need to make sure that we go, it might not matter that I have all the answers. I don't need all the answers. I just need to know where to go and find them and be curious enough to find them. That's sort of what's been really important for me.
Yeah, beautiful. And can I ask then, when it comes to the gender affirmation resource, if you had to highlight, a couple of the things that you think are most important in there for organisations to be considering, what would it be?
Want me to jump in first, or you?
For me, I think for me, what I was really big on was making sure that you're highlighting things around your rights and things around, even your own internal company's policies around leave, etc. Those are some of the first things that I'm always asked when it comes to transitioning. Like, oh, what can I be dismissed? Oh, I don't want to be coming out. I want to make sure I pass because I don't want to lose my job. And unfortunately, we as a community live online and we don't sort of engage very much outside that. We tend to hide. And so what we do is we watch what happens in the US and the UK and have knee-jerk responses to that. Like here in Australia, if I go back and look at since the reportings were happening for gender diverse murders as part of the rising murder rate globally, there's only 4 known recorded cases. I mean, there's other cases that probably happened, but there's only like 4 compared to the US and compared to the UK. So we're a very lucky country when it comes to gender diverse identities, but our unemployment rates are very high because there's no pathways and there's a lack of understanding. So we run off of what we see globally from the US, Canada's, the Brazils, the whatever. And so we don't know our own specific rights. And so there's lots of questions out there. So letting people know exactly what their rights are right up front. At the time, even though the guide's there, most gender diverse people have an idea and plan in their head of what they want to do and how they want to transition. They don't want to wait 6 months. They just want to get it done and over with and get it moving. So it's putting out that plan in place to say, here are the steps to go through within that. But for me, the big thing is the checklists and understanding your rights immediately from the get-go.
Luke, did you have any different?
Yeah, for me, it's about really from a management perspective, because I'm really invested in my people as a people leader, and so for me, what I found the most important piece of the puzzle from my perspective definitely was the plans, the lists of things, that the steps that you can go through. They're really practical, they're really easy, but it actually lays out from sort of start to finish, have you considered, how you're going to talk to your initial teams, to your HR teams, to changing your pronouns, to what all that looks like. And I think that's a wonderful start for both managers and the person who is affirming their gender, to be able to go, it's there in black and white. But the other part that's really important for me that we called out was that nobody's journey is the same. And so we need to make sure that while you've got a checklist and you've got these plans and you've got all these things to work with, that might not be what the person who is affirming their gender needs. And so you need to be as open as you can and respectful as you can, and just move through that process at their pace. So it's a really good guide to be able to go, here are some of the things for you to consider. But we also make sure that we call out, while you're considering those, it might not mean anything if it doesn't mean something to the person who's actually going through this. So that's really important for us.
Yeah, fantastic. And I had an example just of that yesterday, where I was asked to come into an organisation who was employing a staff member who was gender diverse, and they literally wanted the steps. What do they do next? And the answer was, well, what does the person want?
Yeah. What conversations have you had? I think people are nervous though, because if you don't understand, some people are afraid that they'll get it wrong. And look, there's going to be times when you get it wrong, and that's okay, as long as you're being inquisitive and you're making sure that you're being respectful and you're trying to be better. That's sorry, Michelle's going to jump in there. And
no, you made me think immediately. And this is probably going to sound bad, but it's criticism back to our community when going through that process, because our community immediately has a reactive response, immediately going in going, well, you're going to screw this up, or you're going to misgender me, or you're going to this. It's those who are going through that process to have patience and maybe a bit of compassion back and saying, you're the one who's going to walk them through it. And they have some guidelines there, but you're the one who's guiding. And the only successful transition that happens with patience on both sides.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard it articulated that way before. Yeah, that's an interesting.
You've dropped out a little bit.
Oh, have I? I'm having audio issues today.
You're back. We can hear you again.
Of course, I've got a full day of training and live sessions, and it's today the audio goes bum. All right,
and I'll probably get criticism back on that, and I'm happy to take that. But some of the most successful transitions I have seen, and especially in the workplace, it's just that patience and understanding that it doesn't happen overnight, and transition is just that it's a transition. It's a period of time. It doesn't happen for a week or 2 weeks, and you just show up tomorrow and whatever. Like who I was 2 years ago as Michelle is not who I was 2 years before that, or even now. So there's a period. You have to have patience going through it.
I imagine that it would be quite frustrating, because for many people, when they get to the point of looking to affirm their gender in the workplace, they've probably already gone through this internally and personally, could be 10, 15 years prior. So I can imagine why there would be a sense of impatience around that.
And have already talked to family and friends and sort of had to come to a lot of their own self-discovery before they even get to the point where they're ready to do this. So I can understand that there's that, right, okay, I'm ready now, it's got to all happen all at once. But I think taking people on that journey with you is something that it builds much more understanding. It makes people feel like they have been a part of that as well. I must admit, with myself, I actually find it a real privilege when someone comes and tells me that they are affirming their gender, or they're coming out, or for whatever it is. If someone feels safe enough to come and speak to me about that, I actually find that a real privilege that people share that story with me. And so, I think there's got to be that understanding, like Michelle says, from both sides, where I will do the right thing by you and you will do the right thing by me. We might not always get it right, but we'll move through it together.
And each different identity within the overall transgender umbrella, or gender diverse, I like to call it instead, because there's so many different identities. We also have to understand there's certain social things in there. For someone who's transitioning is trans mask, in society, it's okay to be masculine. It's okay to wear, for someone who's assigned female at birth, to wear a men's suit. It's acceptable. There's no question. They just immediately assume that they're sexually diverse, and it's just okay, whatever. But for someone like me, who's 6'3" and lived predominantly as a man, and then transition to feminine, in society, it's not necessarily acceptable or embraced to be feminine or be a woman. And so there's that also that inequity there as well too. And so we need to find a way to work through that. So there's all different challenges even within that space. So it's not just a one model fits everything.
Absolutely, and I can totally relate, and would love to have a whole nother episode on that particular topic, because I certainly understand the privilege I carry presenting more masculine, being female born, and yeah, it's definitely a topic on its own that we could maybe explore in the future. We need to wrap this up now. I just want to kind of summarize some of the things you've said, because it has just been such a bag full of gold here. One of the things I think Michelle said that you said early on was really ask the questions and educate yourself. And I don't think we can emphasize this enough, the need for allies to educate themselves first, then build relationships, and then ask the extra questions that they have. If you haven't seen the show on Stan called Work in Progress, Abby does a great little skit there about telling her brother-in-law about how to educate himself by using Google before he goes and uses the queer community to educate him. And I think we need to.
But don't go to, say, a gay man to ask about transgender women. Like, it's a different thing. And that's the thing you need, because there's still just as much lack of education within the gay and lesbian space as there is within the male space.
When it came to the, creating change within your own organisation, finding your allies, finding a group of people who can help build that momentum with you and that change with you, I love that nobody's transition or affirmation journey is the same, and really being cognizant of that and being personally, let that person drive this process. And the checklist was one of the things that was the key takeaways from that resource guide, so that managers do have a point, have some guidance around this, but again, making sure that the people are driving that, and we know that's what's needed in that particular case. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing this today. I think it's a fantastic resource, and I think it will create change, not just in the transport industry, but elsewhere as well. And if you are in an organisation currently that hasn't considered how it deals with gender affirmation, that work's got to start tomorrow, because it is inevitable that you'll have somebody transition or affirm their gender in the workplace if they haven't done so already. So get your ducks lined up. Thank you. Thank you, Luke and Michelle. Very much appreciate it. And I will catch you all next week for another episode.
Excellent. Thanks, Bree. See you.
Bye.